دوستان عزیز، خانم ها آقایان.
Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your presence at this conference and your attention to the human rights crisis in Iran. On this day, which the UN has designated as the World Day Against the Death Penalty, I salute the 120,000 martyrs for the cause of Iran's freedom, especially the 30,000 Iranian political prisoners massacred in '88. On this day, I have come to appeal to the world for help to stop daily executions in my homeland. Torture and executions must be stopped. This is the demand of all of the Iranian people. I hope that your voice be heard today throughout the world. The human rights of my oppressed compatriots have been violated and put on auction at international level. Swapping human rights for nuclear deal, forsaking human rights in Iran, in the face of the regime's depravity and terrorism in the region, and disregarding human rights in Iran, have become the hallmarks of the weaknesses and cowardice of international policies. Should human rights be respected only on papers and resolutions and international covenants? Why is a red carpet spread for someone who must be put on trial for his direct role in atrocities and terrorism in the past 3 decades? At least condition negotiations with him on ending executions in Iran. I am referring to Mullah Rouhani, the Iranian regime's so-called president. 2 years ago, when he took office, I emphasized that as long as there is no freedom of expression and human rights, no freedom of political prisoners and political parties, and as long as the regime's nuclear program and aggressive regional policies are pursued, nothing will change. Now look at the annual rate of executions during Rouhani's tenure compared to his predecessor. It has tripled. As Rouhani acknowledged, the regime's activities for the manufacture of weapons have increased 5-fold. The budget for security and military affairs and export of fundamentalism has considerably increased. Violation of human rights has jumped in every respect, targeting all Iranians. From human rights defenders to women, youth and teachers who staged a nationwide protest just 2 days ago. And from Christians, Baha'is and the Sunnis to our Arabs, Baluchis and Kurdish compatriots. I must also point to the enraged workers. Yes, the enraged workers. It was just last month that the combatant worker Shahrukh Zamani lost his life in Gohadash prison. Indeed, why does the world remain silent when Iranian political prisoners are tormented to death or hanged? Why is the world silent when juveniles are executed in Iran? And why is the barbaric tyranny not pressured and forced to publish at least a complete list of names of those it has executed? Today, a large number of our defenseless countrymen are secretly executed in prisons across the country. Several thousands more are on the death row right now. We think of their parents and of their wives and children who spend nights and days under stress. Let us think of the women who sell their kidneys to pay for their husband's blood money and save them from being executed. Woe to those criminals and woe to those who appease them.
کسانی که بر این همه نقض حقوق بشر در ایران
Shame on those who turn a blind eye to so much abuse of human rights in Iran. Those who seek to whitewash the bloodstain of this criminal regime and its so-called president must know that the policy will open the way for more atrocities and genocide in the region and the world. Rouhani has clearly pronounced that these executions are either based on divine law or on some legislation adopted by the parliament, and we only carry them out. Despite their differences, the ruling mullahs have a common viewpoint on executions and repression. They benefit from executions to preserve the regime. However, these criminals should know that the blood they spill every day from the body of the Iranian nation will turn into a flood that will ultimately put an end to the mullahs' regime. Honorable ladies and gentlemen, the religious fascism ruling Iran has been mainly hanging people basically on 3 charges. The first and most important charge is political opposition. Since 3 decades ago, tens of thousands have been executed on invalid and unjustifiable charges with no due process of law, only for being in opposition to this regime. Based on the clerical regime's penal code, anyone who is a member and supporter of the PMOI or in any way affiliated to it is considered a muharib, and punishment for muharib is death. The number of those who have been executed for being a dissident is by no means small, and countless young people have been executed for protesting the nationwide oppression. This is while neither in Islam nor in the international law, struggling for regime change is not a crime, but a fundamental and inalienable right of our nation. The second charge used by this regime is on drug charges. The mullahs have hanged a considerable number of Iran's youths on this charge. Whereas these executions violate the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, only last month, the UN Secretary General declared that applying the death penalty to offences such as drug trafficking are not permissible under international law. Yes, indeed, the UN Secretary General has declared that executions under pretext of drug trafficking are not permissible under international law. The Human Rights Council and the High Commissioner on Human Rights have also denounced these executions. And the UN Special Rapporteur on Extrajudicial Executions and UN Office of Drugs and Crimes proclaimed that such crimes are not punishable by death.
اما سومین بهانه آخوندها در مورد اعدام‌ها
But the mullahs' third excuse for executions is that they claim to be implementing Islamic decrees. of course, the mullah's interpretation. A large number of our compatriots are executed based on the medieval law of retribution, which contradicts Islam's message of clemency and compassion. The dynamism inherent in Islam and the Quran rejects these inhuman justifications. Therefore, both claims to Islam and combating drugs are hollow. The mullah's sole objective is to terrorize the society and stifle social protests. They have turned homicide into a common daily routine. The public hangings of convicts in front of their families and even their children crushes their hearts, minds, and conscience. Executions, torture, stoning, amputation of limbs, and eye gouging have been institutionalized and turned into law in this regime. Yes, the existence and rule of this regime depends on executions, because if there are no more executions, there would be nothing to prevent the eruption of public fury and seething social uprisings by the people.
اگر اعدام‌ها نباشد آخوندها با چه اهرمی می‌توانند؟
Without executions, how and by what means could the mullahs deny people their freedoms and instead step up suppression, intimidation, and all sorts of restrictions into the most private angles of people's lives? Without executions, how else could the mullahs increase the prices several folds every day, squander public wealth and revenues into regional wars, and plunder them in a life of luxury? Despite such horrific oppression that feeds into the social potential for explosion, the ruling mullahs must know that they will be ultimately toppled by the Iranian people and their organized resistance.
سرنگون حکومت آخوندی سرنگون دوستان عزیز حضار محترم
Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, Western governments expand their political and business relations with the religious fascism ruling Iran as if this catastrophe is merely a domestic issue. Ironically, such relations are the worst form of interference in the internal affairs of Iran and, of course, serve the interests of the mullahs. Ignoring Iranian people's human rights and freedoms is the basic cause of the failure of Western policy, not only in Iran, but also in the entire region. In the recent nuclear deal, predicating the agreement on respect for the Iranian people's human rights could have forced the regime into a full retreat. When the mullahs are given an open hand in the brutal execution of our nation, they step up their threats in the region and the whole world. Therefore, we say to the Western governments, make all relations with the Iranian regime contingent upon the end of the death penalty. Pressure the mullahs regime to free all political prisoners.
پرونده نسل کشی این رژیم
refer the case of the 1988 massacre, which is a crime committed against humanity by this regime, to the International Criminal Court.
مقاومت
Respect the Iranian people's resistance for freedom.
و در مورد
As for the mullahs' main target of killing and massacre in recent years, namely the PMOI members in Camp Liberty, deliver on your promises to protect them. Specifically, the inhuman siege on Camp Liberty and especially its medical blockade must be lifted. Camp Liberty's dossier and its management must be taken out of the hands of elements affiliated to the Iranian regime. The dispatch of intelligence ministry agents to Liberty under whatever pretext is a prelude to another massacre and must be stopped. And the government of Iraq must facilitate the sale of the PMOI properties in Ashraf to fund the expenses in Liberty. Dear friends, I would like to take this opportunity and say, our plan for a future Iran is Iran without the death penalty. The Iranian resistance declared years ago that it calls for abolition of the death penalty and an end to torture and all forms of rights abuses in Iran. Our plan is to revive friendship, conciliation and tolerance. Our plan for a future Iran is to put an end to the mullahs' religious decrees. We reject the inhuman penal code and other abusive laws of this regime. We believe retribution is an inhuman law. We advocate laws that are based on forgiveness, compassion, and humanity. The Iranian resistance leader Masoud Rajavi ordered the release of thousands of Khomeini's agents arrested in the battles of the National Liberation Army of Iran, many of whom had committed murder against the PMOI without the slightest violation of their human rights.
بله به همین دلیل و بسیاری دلایل دیگر شما این شعار رو میدهید و حق شماست که این شعار رو بدهید.
Yes, this is an enduring tradition left by Masoud, which has been kept alive until today by the Iranian resistance. Dear friends, our plan for a future Iran is to institute an independent, dynamic and free judiciary. Our plan is to defend democratic values, freedom, equality and sanctity of every citizen's private life. No one will be arrested arbitrarily, torture is banned, No defendant is deprived of the right to defense and having a defense attorney. The principle of presumption of innocence is respected, and no one, especially no women, will be deprived of having access to justice when subjected to violence, aggression, and abuse of her freedoms. Our plan of Iran's future is that no one should be denied of his or her freedom, rights, or life because of having or not having faith in a particular religion or for abandoning it. Our plan is for all citizens to enjoy genuine security and equal rights before the law. Yes, we are seeking a new order based on freedom, democracy, and equality. We have chosen to persevere and fight on to let our people enjoy a life in freedom and prosperity. So that no youngster under 18 would have to wait in the corridors of the death in prisons to reach legal age for execution. So that no mother would ever shed tears of grief for an executed child. Our motivation for resistance till victory is not spite and revenge, but our love for freedom and human rights. This is the philosophy of our steadfastness. This is the philosophy of perseverance, and the secret to this endurance is nothing but being prepared to sacrifice and pay the price.
به این لیست شهدا نگاه کنید.
Look at this list, the Book of Martyrs.
به صفی از زندانیان مقاوم نگاه کنید.
Look at the resistant prisoners.
به آن ایستادگان سرفراز در
Look at those who stand proud at Liberty Prison. Look at our compatriots who support the resistance the world over in the largest ever international campaign in our times. These are all glad tidings of Iran's freedom. Yes, our plan is not just a dream, but the certain future of Iran. The sacrifice and pain of the prisoners, the endurance of the pioneers of freedom and liberty are a calling on everyone to rise up to create such a bright future. I wish you all success.